Here I am, Mike Bodner here again. I did a review of my 2019 Royal Enfield Classic 500 EFI after I'd had it for about 2 weeks. Now I've owned it for about 6 months, so I thought I'd do an update because there have been some really good points and there's been one particularly bad point, but let's come to that in a moment. Let me explain first of all why we're here. Obviously there's a view. This is Wellington, New Zealand. The harbour in the background. I'm on one of the hills here, famous for having been a focal point, no pun intended, for astronomical observations, weather observations, because of its height since the 1920s and maybe earlier. But the other reason I'm here, let me show you this. This is a 1918 Krupp 5.3 inch field gun, and it was brought back to New Zealand after the war finished in 1918, the Great War, because New Zealanders had managed to capture it during the battle for the Canal du Nord. And here it is, a trophy of the First World War. Now, the reason that I've come here today, apart from the fact that there's a nice view, is that, as any Royal Enfield fan will tell you, the slogan for Royal Enfield used to be "made like a gun." And in fact, the emblem that they used, the logo, looked very like this. Now, this is a Krupp gun, so therefore it's German, and it almost certainly wasn't a German gun that they used on their logo. But here it is in pride of place, overlooking Wellington Harbour. Gorgeous. And great riding country too. If you ever get a chance to come to New Zealand to ride, I urge you to do so. Right, let's get on with the bike. In the first video I did, after I'd owned this just for a couple of weeks, I was very complimentary about it. I raved about it. It was great. Since then, I've learned a few things. Let's start with the Speedo, for example. If you look at the Speedo, while you're riding along, you think, yes, okay, I'm doing 50 kilometers an hour. That's the speed limit in urban New Zealand for most of it. In a city, you might find it drops to 30. That doesn't matter. The point is, every now and then you pass one of those electronic signs that flashes at you and tells you what your speed is. And what I've discovered is that it's around about up to 10 kilometers an hour out. So whereas I think I'm doing 50 kilometers an hour, it tells me I'm doing 40. And if I'm doing 60, it tells me I'm doing 50. So I'm having to guess what the speed is around town based on that Speedo. I did jokingly say that the Speedo on the bike was actually to show you how slow you were going, but I'm not sure it's showing you much at all. Right, that was the Speedo. Let's go on to the fuel tank. It's a decent size as far as tanks go, but here's the problem. When you open it to fill at your local service station and you try and put the nozzle in, you can't go any further than that because the tank straddles the the frame. Now that's true of most motorbikes, to be fair, but this one is very, very close. So in fact you can't put the nozzle in very far at all. What that means is that you are going to get splashed with fuel while you're trying to fill it at the service station if you pump the fuel in too quickly. So you have to do it very, very slowly, extremely slowly. I've spent days at a service station filling this tank. But yeah, that's one thing. And you know what? The easy answer to that would be, if Royal Enfield, take note here, engineers in Royal Enfield, if you offset it. There were plenty of older English bikes back from the 40s, 50s, 60s, maybe earlier, that used to have the filler cap offset to one side, possibly to get over that very, very problem. But anyway, that has been frustrating. Let's have a look at a good point. Here it is, the kickstart. I love it because a couple of times now I've had to use it for various reasons. The bike wouldn't go with its electric start, and this has come in really handy. Now, I'm lucky it was on the bike when I bought it. As I say, it's a 2019 model, and I believe that later models, I'm not sure when Royal Enfield stopped putting them on, they don't have kickstarts anymore. A friend has just bought a 2022 model, and there is no kickstart. He may regret that at some stage, but in the meantime I like it because it gives you a manual option to start your bike. Good thing. I had some comments about the seating when I first did a review of the bike, and since then I've done, it's just turned 12,000 kilometers. I think it was about 10,000 when I got it. So I've done a fair bit of riding in that 6 months. No real major trips, but I have spent sometimes 4 or 5 hours in the saddle, and I have to say it is actually very comfortable. I still think though that in a way some of the older British bikes, and certainly the older models that used to have a single seat, not a single saddle, but a single seat that was in one go right to the back, allowed you to, if you wanted to see if you could break some speed records and you wanted to put your chin on the petrol tank, then you could move your butt to the back and basically go prone. But look, this isn't a bike for breaking speed records, so I'm not going to complain about that. It's fine. So the bags were on the bike when I got it, and I'm glad they were, because I think they're about $600 to buy as an accessory. That includes the frame that they sit on. But they've been quite good. They're made of canvas and they've got a waterproof lining. I say waterproof as a throwaway word here because I'm not sure that it is entirely. But and the back seat, I could replace the back seat and put a luggage rack here if I wanted to. But I went away on the National Rally, which involved a ride of about 4 hours, 4.5 hours, and I got, well, you can see from the photographs here, managed to get a tent on the back, a sleeping bag, a few other bits and pieces. The saddlebags were full, so it was not a problem at all. Obviously there wouldn't be any room for a pillion, but my wife wasn't going to come to the rally. I don't know why. But here's a downside. I can't easily, if I go to a service station and use the air to put some air in the tyres, the front's fine, I can do that, but the back, almost impossible, just because the disc brake gets in the way on this side of the valve connector, and on the other side the exhaust pipe gets in the way as well. And what I found, and I just did it today, going into a service station, was that even if I spin the wheel round and find the valve, which is not hard to do, except of course it's always, oh, there it is there, it looks like that's easily accessible, but you really need to have one of those really flat type connectors from your air pump to go on them, because if you've got anything that's like got a wand, sometimes your air pump can come at a service station with a sort of a hand grip on it, then it's almost impossible to get that exhaust pipe gets in the way on this side, the disc brake on the other, and it doesn't really help either that you've got quite a well-engineered frame for the saddlebags. The saddlebags do come off quite easily, I have to say. You've only got to undo things here and they lift off quite nicely, which is quite good if you want to take them with you somewhere. The throttle, you open it, the bike goes, as it should, but it's actually got quite a bit of torque. And it's 5-speed, but most of around town is done in third or fourth, and it just burbles along beautifully. Speaking of burbling, I mean, if we come around here, I did joke about this enormous exhaust pipe in the first video I did after I'd had it for 2 weeks. I'm not joking about it anymore because actually it puts out a great sound. It may look rather large, but you know, big is good. And it works fine. The only problem I've had with it was it developed a rattle while I was on the Royal Enfield Owners Register here in New Zealand on the National Rally. There was a rattle, and so what I did was just tighten all the screws I could find. There were 2 there and another couple around here, and the rattle went away, so that's okay. It's big and it's robust. It's good. Because this is a unit construction, the engine and gearbox share the same oil. That's your oil filler cap there, and underneath you've got 2 drain plugs. 2 drain plugs under your crankcase, one at the front, one towards the rear, and you shake the bike backwards and forwards to make sure all the oil comes out, and it should be warm, of course. Down here you can just see is a sight glass. Now, on the older British bikes that I used to have, you didn't have one of those, you had a dipstick. Sometimes people referred to the rider as the dipstick, but in this case it was something that went into your oil tank, which used to be up here, and that's not an oil tank anymore. Now what happens is that actually this is quite good, because there are 2 little marks on there that show you that your oil should, in the window, be halfway between them, or at least up maybe towards the top one. So you can do that. And the other thing you can do is check the condition of your oil. Now, I changed my oil. The oil that came out was black, which is normal if it's been in there for a while. But what I also found was when I put the new oil in, after it all drained out and I put the new oil in, you could look in this window here, and you could see how clean it was. So now I can keep an eye on how clean it is, which is quite nice. Although you still have to change it at regular intervals, obviously. The spark plug. Now, as you can see, it's quite recessed. So the impact that has really is that when you're trying to get the spark plug out, you've taken your cap off and you've put your spark plug spanner in, you can only really turn the spanner at a time, one increment at a time. So getting the spark plug out takes a little bit of time. Once it's loose, of course, then you can get it out without too much trouble and just use fingers. Just below here is the horn. Now, I've had to use this on occasion to blast people in tin tops who haven't seen me. But I have to say, usually my swearing is louder than the horn. It's okay, it beeps, but it's a bit of a tinny beep. I'm thinking of replacing that. Possibly I could put a second one on the other side, balance them out, and have twice the volume. But okay, that's that. Meanwhile though, let's get back to some good points. Gear change. Very easy, very smooth, lovely. A joy to use. Braking is fine. I haven't had to do any real emergency braking, but I have just tried it out occasionally to make sure that it's working okay, and yeah, I have to say the disc brakes work very well. And here's something else. It's an added bonus, and it's entirely to do with the aesthetics of the bike. In short, she's a pretty bike. And what happens is people stop and talk to you when you've got one of these. Probably it's true of any of the Enfields, the Bullets or the 350s or whatever the model is called wherever you are. But people often think it's an older style British motorcycle, and obviously that is the aesthetic that Royal Enfield have continued over the generations that they've been making them in India. But it does attract attention. If you're not an attention seeker, then I suggest you buy something ordinary, but this is extraordinary. And of course, a lot of people, especially older blokes, they tend to be men, will come up and want to know, you know, have you restored it? How much did it take? How long did it take you to restore and all this thing? Then you have to explain to them that, well, it's got a computer on board and it's got electronic fuel injection. So let's talk about that, because I'm still in two minds. So the thing is, I grew up with British motorcycles. This is my 26th motorbike, and I've been riding since I was 15. Now, a lot of the earlier ones that I had, the Triumphs, BSA, Matchless, and so forth, were very, very simple in their construction. At the most, they were a two-cylinder, like the Triumph 5TA that I had, often like the Matchless, a single. In fact, this bike reminds me a lot of the Matchless while I'm riding it. It's really enjoyable in that respect. But none of them had a computer on board. None of them had electronic fuel injection. They had a single amyl carburetor. And if you wanted to adjust the air mixture, you got a screwdriver out and adjusted the screw on the side of the carburetor. You could strip the carb yourself easily, clean everything, put it all back together, not a problem. This has a engine management unit on board. I think there's about 4 or 5 different sensors that send signals to it that tell it about the temperature of the O2, that tell it where the throttle position is, and it then, you know, it does various things like adjust. I think they call it mapping. It adjusts things according to what the sensor readouts are. The thing is, that terrifies me, because if it goes wrong, what do I do? And I had a major problem with this bike. One of the proposed answers was replace the engine management unit. Well, okay, that sounds like a very straightforward thing to do. Take the old one out, put a new one in. You're talking hundreds and hundreds of dollars. And that's the sort of thing that, because I've worked on my bikes myself, originally because I couldn't afford mechanics, latterly because I don't trust dealers, I like to work on my bikes. I have done things on this one. I've adjusted the chain, that was easy. I've changed the oil, that was easy. There's a very good video on YouTube done by Hitchcock's Motorcycles in England. It shows you exactly how to do it step by step. I've adjusted various things. I've had the battery out to check that, to fix the terminals which had cracked due to vibration, I'm presuming. And you know, yes, I can do things, but when it comes to electronics and computers, that's not me. So I can hear you asking now, why did you buy it? Well, it was the right price. It was the right mileage, the right number of owners, really. I think it had no more than 3, and one of those at least was a dealer. And I was looking for something like this, and it just came along at the right time. I didn't think too much about the computer side of it or the EFI side of it at that time. But, and in principle, if the bike's going well, I shouldn't have to think about that anyway. But it didn't go well. It had a major problem. I'm going to do that as a separate video, because it deserves some time devoted to what the problem was, how frustrating it was, what it could have been, and how I fixed it. And I will, spoiler alert, tell you I saved almost $1,000 by working out what to do. And that's about it, really. I'd still give it 8 or 9 out of 10. The build quality is great. The ride is superb. It does bring more smiles per gallon almost than any other bike I've owned. And as I say, this is bike number 26. I've had it 6 months. Maybe I'll come back in 6 years and let you know how it's going then. Meantime, I've got some riding to do.